Okay, hello everybody. We have people from all over the world, and we are so excited to see you guys. We have South Carolina, Colorado, Budapest, Lebanon, South Africa. Let's all code together. This is going to be great. Let me just make sure for a check. Is everyone hearing me clearly? Can everyone see everything clearly? Let's just check. Okay, that's awesome. Good. Let's do this. All right, so first of all, hello, I'm Kyla. Some of you guys might recognize me from a live stream I did before. I'm back again, and this time I'm in my domain of web development. We're going to talk about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and we're going to make a really cool interactive site. It's a mini site. It's really simple, so if anybody is brand new to web dev, has never touched any of this before in their life, you're fine. We will walk through this together. And if you know a little something, then you're also in the right place because you will get to play around with the interactive side of making a website. We're going to use JavaScript, and afterwards I'll talk to you a little bit more about taking what we learned today and doing something even cooler with it. So, to get started, we are going to make this random color generator. So you guys may, or is it this side? You guys may have seen some stuff about it on Twitter, on YouTube, but this is what we're going to make here today. This is one of the exercises from our web development path. So if you're a part of the path, you may recognize it. If you're not on our web dev path, this is probably new to you, but feel free to check out our web dev path in your free time and see other lessons like this. What we're going to do is make this from scratch and give it the ability to have an interactive buttons. So we can click on these buttons to change the color or scroll over one of the buttons and create a mystery color. Is everyone ready? All right, so I'm going to reset this from the beginning. Also, just so you know, the way you can access this is through the link in the project description. So, when you open yours up, it's probably going to look blank like this. If it does, perfect. That means it's time to get started. So, we're going to go in first with the HTML of the website. HTML creates the structure of a web page. So it's pretty much saying, I want my text to be here, my images there, maybe a button here. That's how we determine it. What's already there is a little bit of boilerplate. Every HTML file should start off with this doc type HTML tag you're seeing at the beginning. After that, we have our HTML tag followed by a head tag. The head tag holds a bunch of information that the user isn't necessarily going to see on the website, but it helps to make the website work. We have a meta, a link tag. That link tag is linking to the CSS. The CSS is going to give style to the website, but we're going to do that later. And then after that, we have another link tag with our favorite font here at Codecademy, Nunito. I love using it. We use it everywhere, and I just wanted our website to be beautiful with fancy font, so we're using that one. And then after that, we have a body tag. And that body tag right here is empty. It's empty, and we're going to fill it. So, in order to get started filling it, we want to add a section tag. This section tag is going to hold all of the contents of the website. I just like to do this as a best practice just to hold everything, and I can play around with the section tag and make it fancy if I need to, but it's just a great way of holding things together. All of these HTML tags are like pieces of bread and different layers of a sandwich holding all of the website together. So you notice I have my section tag, and then I have another section tag with a slash in front of it. That's called the end tag. All of the contents within the section tag go in between the two tags. So you want your code to look like this at the end. So I create a section tag, head tag, section end tag, and then inside of that, I'm going to get going on this website. Okay. So after that, to recreate what we had before, I want to add a rainbow image. There was an image at the beginning, you guys might have noticed. In order to do this, I'm going to create an image tag. An image tag is a funny tag that doesn't need an end tag. I don't really know how to explain it. It's just like how there's weird things in the English language, like P and H make F. Who decided that? I don't know. But we have image tag, which doesn't have an end tag to it. It's just one sole tag. Inside of that tag, we want to write src, an equal sign, and 2 quotations. That is going to find the source for the image tag. So where are we getting this image from, you may ask? Inside of the narrative, if you scroll, at the very end, I gave you additional information. Use the following image tag to add the rainbow image to the web page. You're going to copy this image tag and put it here. Sorry, I probably should have explained that part before. So in that image tag, we have our source still, and that source is a link, and that link is holding our rainbow picture. After that, I have alt text, and it says rainbow icon. So if anything goes wrong with your website, instead of seeing the rainbow image, you're going to see the words rainbow icon. Just a little blurb about how the image tag works. Make sure you copy paste that after your section head tag and before your section end tag. It should be between those. After that, I'm going to run my code. As you can see, it's kind of crazy and kind of big. We're going to be fixing this later. But for now, let's just leave it. After my image tag and still inside of my section tag, I want to create more things. I want to have a title for my website. And with for my title, I'm going to use an H1 tag. The H1 tag is a header tag that allows me to, a heading tag that allows me to create a title in big text. I want that title to be random color generator, because that's what we're doing here today. So you should have an H1 element after your image tag. Inside of the H1 element, you want random color generator. That text should be in front of after the header and in front of the end tag. Okay, I'm going to take a little break to let some people catch up, make sure everything's going well, and maybe chat with you guys. Let's see what's going on in the chat. We have, You want me to talk a little bit louder? I will be sure to talk louder so you guys can hear me clearly. And seems like we're confused. What exactly is the meta tag? Cool, that's an excellent question. That meta tag, it has UTF-8 in it. It's pretty much saying that we are going to be writing this website in English, and to understand the different, it's saying that it's a funky little tag, and this tag is in like almost every website. It's just pretty much saying like the character set that we're using is like the basic English language that you're seeing probably on your keyboard using the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, along with some punctuation and things like that. It just helps the HTML to read the page better. Awesome. Any other questions? Please, the link. The link at the beginning is for what? So there's 2 links on our page right now. We have the link tag, a link inside of our link tag. Maybe I should explain the link tags first. So the first link is linking to the CSS. So you can see that it says style CSS inside of that link tag. That's saying that we're going to connect our HTML to a style CSS file. That's the second tab inside of your learning environment. It's empty right now because we haven't gotten started yet. We'll get there later. After that, there's another link tag that connects us to the font. We like to use a fancy font from Google Fonts called Nunito. I love it. And so I stuck that in there so later on you guys can add some font to your styling, but we're also not in the style yet. Then there's another just like plain old hyperlink link inside of the image tag, and that is linking to the rainbow image that we see here inside of our environment, and it's in our browser, sorry. And it's taking up a lot of room, but we're gonna fix that later. So now everyone should be at the point where you have a image tag and an H1 tag inside of your section tag. Let's run it so that we can see that random color generator pop up at the bottom, and here it is. And it's in this ugly default text. We're going to change that later on when we get to the style. But for now, let's focus on the structure. So next, we want to have, let's have like a little paragraph tag. So we want a P tag. I cannot type. We want a P tag, and that P tag is going to hold a quick description. Let's say, find your new favorite color. That's our description. So that will be there. Once you hit the run tag, you will see that new paragraph after your H1 tag. Everything in HTML comes in the sequence we give it to it, unless we tell it to do otherwise. So first you'll see your rainbow image, then your title, then your text. If you see it in a weird order, it's probably because you're not using the same order I have here. Cool. Now, after we have our fun little description, we're going to create 2 buttons. And luckily, the button tag is nice and straightforward. You want to have button start and end. And we're going to have 2 of those. So I'm just going to copy paste that and make another one. The first button should say pick a color. This is the button that we are going to use to click on and change the color. When we click on it every time, we'll get a brand new color. In order to do that, we're going to use some JavaScript later on today. After that, we're going to have a mystery color button. That's what the second button should be called. This one we're going to scroll over, and every time we scroll, it will randomly pick a color from the entire rainbow, which is going to be pretty cool. So I'm going to hit run again. If I scroll down, I will see 2 incy-bincy tiny little buttons. One says pick a color and one says mystery color, just like I asked. We're going to style those though. Let's fix up this website so it looks prettier, because this is just like early 90s terrible. Let's get started. Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to throw them in the chat if you have them so far. I'm going to head over to our style CSS. That is the second tab inside of the text editor. Now let's make things pretty. Let me make sure I have all my rules in front of me of what I want this to look like. So first thing that I want is I want my body element to have better spacing than it does. You guys might notice where I'm at right now, I have the rainbow image there, and there's like a tiny white space between the edge of the browser and the rainbow image, and the edge of the browser and my text, and the edge of the browser and my buttons. I don't like that. So I'm going to call on the body element. Remember our sandwich in HTML? Our body element is right here. It holds all of the elements that the user is going to see on the web page. So I'm calling this element to make a change to it in my CSS. So I say body, and then I create 2 curly brackets. Those curly brackets are going to hold rules about the body element. I want no padding. So padding colon 0 semicolon. I don't want any padding. I don't want any weird spacing. The padding is the space inside of my body. I don't want any of that. And I also don't want anything funky to happen either outside of the body element. So I'm going to say margin 0 semicolon. That changes the spacing outside of the body element. There should be none. I don't want any of that. So I'm just letting my browser know that by creating this. After that, I want to call on that Nunito font that we're using. That fancy font I really like, that's linked inside of the HTML. That third tag inside of the head, it links to a Google font called Nunito. I want to take this font, so I'm copy pasting that title, and I'm going to say to my body element that I want your font family, it's so cute that it's called a family, to be, in quotations, Nunito, N-U-N-I-T-O, inside of quotations. And then after that, I need a semicolon again. So okay, someone's asking a question, how do I get CSS? Your CSS is inside of this project already. So before we were in the HTML, Now we want to click on the second tab. If you look at the very top, it's probably over my head this way, I don't know. There's index.html, style.css, and main.js. We're leaving the index.html to go to style CSS. So just click over to that second tab and you should be all good. You have someone from Scotland? Like, this is amazing. This is amazing. Okay, so I'm going to run this. Now, we haven't made crazy changes, but what we will see is that there's no weird spaces in between the edge of the browser and my images and text anymore. And also, the text has changed very drastically for my title and my paragraph. And I find that it looks so much better. You might disagree, but I think it looks good. So after that, I'm going to go back into the body and I want to make one more change. We had a beautiful red background before on our website. I want to change the background color of this website so it looks like something that we had before. So I'm going to say background dash color colon, and then what color should we make this? I want you guys to decide. What color do you guys think this should be? I'm gonna have some water while I wait. Red, fire brick, ooh, blue. Some of you may know, if you've played around with CSS before, that there are some really funky color names that you guys can use. It's great. Well, I do like the idea of purple. We got some blues. We're getting a lot of blues. All right, I'm gonna go with blue. Turquoise, sky blue. All right, let's try something fun. So what some of you guys may or may not know is you can use CSS to call in some pretty funky colors. If I type in the word light, let me put a space because just so it looks better and it's easy to read. If I put the word light blue with no space, it turns a color. CSS understands what light blue means. And I want to put my semicolon after that. And let's run this. And all of a sudden we have this beautiful sky blue for our rainbow image to sit on top of. I love this. Let's keep going. And also, I use light blue. Feel free to use whatever color you want and test it out. You can type out color names and CSS will understand. Awesome. Also, I see that we have Vinicius Lino. I might have pronounced your name wrong. I'm sorry. He's using this funky little code here you might notice in the chat. That's called hexadecimal colors. You can also use like funky codes for color. Before, when I had my pretty red color in the original website, I was using this hexadecimal color. It's this weird thing. Feel free to join in on the web dev path. Check out some of our CSS courses if you want to learn more about it, but it also makes colors like our original red that we had before. But I'm a fan of the light blue, so I'm going to keep it. Let's run that again. See that change? Beautiful. So the next thing I want to change is this image. It's been huge for way too long. So what I want to do is call on the image tag from the HTML. And I'm going to tell it I want the width to change, put a colon after that, and let's give it a width of about 200 pixels, because why not? Feel free to make it whatever size you want. I like it like this. I think that this is fine. After that, I want to tell it that, I want to tell the browser to put that image in the center. I don't like it being on the side. That's weird. So first I'm going to say, change your display to block. This means treat this element like a block that sits on top of other things and has something sitting on top of it. It doesn't have, it's not going to sit in line with the rest of the elements. Then after that, I'm going to say margin. We're going to call in that margin again. And I want to say 0, but I want to say auto after that. A-U-T-O, auto. That is going to tell it to push this to the center. There should be equal space on both sides. When I run that, it's magically in the middle. I love this about web dev is that I can like control this whole situation and make everything beautiful. That's my favorite part about this. After that, I'm going to go ahead and keep editing. So we have our H1 tag. That is our title. And I want to also put that in the middle, but I think I'm going to do it a little differently. This is also a really great hack to know. You can say width of 100%. I want it to have a width of the whole browser. And then after that, I'm going to say text dash align center. I want my text to be aligned in the center. When I run this, it's in the middle again. I think I'm also going to do that for the paragraph tag, so things are in line. With 100% text align center. That's awesome. So we're already creating a far more beautiful website than we had in the first place. Pat yourself on the back because you're doing great. I'm going to check to see if any questions are popping up again. Let's see, how are we doing? We have a question about margin, auto font, Wow, these are some really good questions. So I'm gonna answer them in the order that I see them. First, I'm seeing someone saying, isn't it better to use percentage instead of pixel? This is something that shows me that you know a little something about web dev, because you can use pixels to hard code something. That picture that I have there is always going to be 200 pixels once I say 200 pixels. That's called hard coding. I could soft code it to be a percentage instead. So instead of being 200 pixels, I could say that I want this image to be 50% of my screen, and it'll change it up. Now what's going to happen is, if I click this icon right here, I can extend the size of my browser. When I extend the size of the browser, the picture is going to grow with it. If I keep it at 200 pixels and run it and extend the browser, it's always going to be 200 pixels. So really, it's up to you. I'll leave it up to you what you want to do for that image. That's a really great question. Someone else was asking something about margin 0 auto I had seen. So what's happening there is the image is sitting in the center now, because it's like really weird CSS speak, but what I'm pretty much saying by margin 0 auto is that I don't want any spaces outside of my margin, which is the space outside of the element. I don't want any space outside of the element, but I want it to automatically sit somewhere, and that is in the middle. So 0 auto will push any element to the center. But before I can do that, I have to make sure I have display block so that there are no other elements on the side of the element I'm trying to change. Someone else mentioned something about their font not working, Nunito. Make sure that new Nito is inside of quotations. I would also say that go back to your HTML and make sure that you haven't changed that last link tag. That should probably fix things. Make sure the link is also inside of quotations. I can't see your screen, so it's hard for me to say exactly what's up, but try doing those two things, and hopefully your font starts working again. Someone asked a question about the body element. Does it make everything in the middle? No, it does not on its own. We have to tell it to do that. So the edits we made to the body tag are simply fixing the space of the body tag and assigning a font family to all the child elements, all the elements inside of the body element, and changing the color of the body element. If there's anything I said in the beginning that you missed, this will be recorded so you can rewatch it as many times as you want. Share it with some of your friends, and let's keep going. So we have things in the center now, but one thing that I'm really not happy about is this spacing. It's really weird. Everything's bunched up at the top. Let's spread things out. So one thing I'm going to add is I don't want my image to sit directly at the top of the picture. I want to have some space. Let everything flow. So I'm going to say margin, again, dash top to adjust the top margin of the image. And I want it to have 50 pixels, let's say. When I run this, it's going to push the image down from the top so that there's a little more space to breathe. I also want to add a margin below it because I don't want the random color generator title to be so close to it. I'm going to say, again, margin dash bottom this time. And let's give it another 50 pixels. When I run that, I'm getting a little more space. I think that my elements are enjoying that. They like to have a little space. And let's change the title. Let's change the title. I think that it's a little small and it could be larger. So I'm going to say font dash size to change the size of this text. And I want it to be 30 pixels. Now, once again, like someone said before, we can make these percentages if we want. Feel free to play around with that if you have the time to. But I want it to be hard pixels so I just know what I'm getting every time. And now my text is bigger now that I've changed the font size to 30 pixels. And I'm going to also make that paragraph larger because no one can read that. And let's say 18 pixels. Looks better, maybe more. Let's say 24. Better. I like that. I think that I also want to change the color of my paragraph. So I'm going to say color. What color should I do this time for the paragraph? Let's make sure we can read it too. So it should probably be a darker color. Uh-oh, strange bug. If you're finding that there's a strange bug with your editor, I'd run your code one more time and refresh the screen. What colors are you guys thinking about? Dark pink, violet. Oh, you guys are getting fancy. Navy blue, purple, dark blue. Oh, guys, you guys are so into blue today. Let's do blue again. I'll do a darker blue. I think it'll actually look nice too. Let's try dark blue. And there's also, actually, you can also type in the word navy. Let's try navy. So I want my color, colon, navy, semicolon. And then I'm going to run this again. And it changed to navy. And I think it looks good. So let's keep it. I think that I want to have a little space underneath my title from my paragraph also. So it matches what I had before. And I'm going to have, I'm going to add margin dash bottom to the H1. And let's say another 50 pixels. Cool. It just looks a little better. So last but certainly not least, we want to style these buttons. These buttons are looking a little weird. So first things first is I want to call on the button tags. Now there's two button tags, but when I say button in my CSS, it's going to find any button inside of the HTML files. So both of these buttons are going to get styled the way I ask. I'm going to say that I want my buttons to have a width of, I want it to be larger. So let's say a width of 350 pixels and a height, because I can call on that too, of 100 pixels. And let's see how this looks. It's getting better. Now you'll notice that they are now one on top of each other. That's simply because they don't fit in the browser at this size. But if I click on that icon again and expand it, they're sitting side by side still, and I don't want that. So next thing I'm going to do is say display. Let me scroll up so you guys can see that better. Display, colon, inline. Sorry, not inline. Don't do that. Display, colon, block, semicolon. Now let's run that again. They're sitting on top of each other again, but if I extend it, it's still sitting on top of each other. I want them to be vertically aligned, not horizontally. So now that I have that, it's looking a little better, but I don't like this color at all. So let's give these buttons a background color. And let's just say navy for now to match the paragraph. And let's give it a font color of white so you can read the text properly. I'm going to just add some spaces here so you guys can see this better because I think it's getting cut off. Oh wait, someone else said purple. I have been seeing purple, so we'll just make this purple. Why not? I'll make the background color purple instead with a font color of white. And let's run this. And now we see it's looking a little bit better. It's looking good. I want my font to be larger. So we'll do font size again, and let's say 30 pixels, so it's nice and big. And now my readers can easily see the text. But if you notice, it's not Nunito. What's going on? We need to call again Nunito inside a button, because sometimes the CSS acts a little funny and it doesn't want to follow along with what its parent element told it to do. So we're going to say font family again. We're going to have a colon, and inside of quotations, we want to say Nunito, semicolon. Let's run that again. There we go. I don't know about you guys, but I want this to be in the center to align with everything else. So I'm going to say margin 0 auto again. The reason I can do this is because I've already said display block earlier up. That's important to note. I'm going to run that, and it's in the center again. And then after that, I'm going to say margin dash bottom. And I want them to have a bottom margin of about 10 pixels so that there's some space. Cool. I think that there could be a little more space after that paragraph tag. So I'm going to go back to my P tag. I'm going to say margin dash bottom. And I'll give that 30 pixels so that there's some space between my paragraph and that very first button. And things are coming together. How do you guys feel? You guys are doing really well. We made it pretty far. For those of you who've never touched HTML or CSS before in your life, like, congrats. Oh.
I think you're on now.
And now am I on?
So
Can people
that's
hear?
internal mic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Titanic. Oh boy.
Let me see if
People are having so much fun right now in these comments.
Yeah,
okay, people can, the guy that stays out of sight, yes, that is, Alex is my handy dandy, help me, I just broke something. And he's also a part of our data science path. You're still in the data science path, right? Yeah. And he writes really cool stuff for really intelligent people like yourselves. So you should check that out sometime. I'm so glad you guys can hear me again. I noticed that someone mentioned something in the comments about font family inherit. So for some of my fancy people who want to play around, I can also say font dash family colon inherit, and that would also adopt the Nunito font from the body tag, from its parent tag. It's inheriting the font. Let's play around with that. I'm going to comment out that first font family that I have. That is a slash, asterisk, and then followed by an asterisk slash to comment something out. And I'm going to run it. And as you can see, Nunito's working again. I wasn't sure if you guys would be ready for all of that, so I didn't say it, but thank you for calling that out because it's an excellent way to help other people learn. Thank you. I hope that everyone's like back. regulate so you don't hear so much background noise, will do. I'm going to, I don't even know. Oh, no sound again. How are you guys? I'm going to give it a second just to like see everyone. It seems like most people can hear. Yes, it is delayed by 15 seconds. So I'm going to keep going now. Things should be good. So where we left off, we have a beautifully created website. I still don't know which side of me it's on. This way. And we are, we have our style, we have our structure from the HTML, our style from the CSS, but now we want to have some behavior from the JavaScript. So if you go to the very last tab, the third tab that says main.js, we will see our JavaScript. I provided some comments here to help you guys understand what it is we're doing. So if you're ever like, what the heck is going on, Kyla? Read the comment above and it'll probably explain a little bit what it is we're even trying to do. But I will explain to you guys as we go on, so don't worry. What I want to do pretty much with my JavaScript, let's think this through. I want to be able to click or scroll on a button to get it to change its color randomly. I don't want to have to tell it what color to change it to. It should pick one on its own. And once it picks one, it should stop and wait for my click or scroll again to do it again. JavaScript is really smart, but you have to give it the directions to do these things with. So I am going to I want to call on my pick a button and mystery button elements separately. So because of that, as you guys can see in the first two comments, I have this variable stores a pick a color button, and this variable stores the mystery color button. I want to go back to my HTML first. And as we can see, we have those two buttons here. The only thing that makes them different from each other is the content. And JavaScript, we don't really want JavaScript to be concerned with the content as much as the element of itself. So I'm going to go into my button and I'm going to give it an ID. ID gives me an identification for that button or whatever element it is. So ID equals quotation marks. Let's say original dash button. And after that, I want to say ID equals, on the second button, ID equals quotations, mystery button. This is really crucial that you guys do this so that your JavaScript works. So make sure you have two IDs on both, one for each button tag, and make sure you give them two separate names. I said original button and mystery button. If you guys feel comfortable, you guys can stray away and give it a different name if you choose to, but make sure you remember that name because we're going to go back into the JavaScript and call on it. In order to do that, I want to say to my JavaScript, hey, for the pick a button, pick a color button, sorry, I want to say call on the original button ID because that is how we can identify that button. So first I say const. Const is a way to declare a variable in JavaScript. And I want JavaScript to also call the original button, but I want to do it in a way that JavaScript understands. So if I type out original button, dash button, the way that it was inside of HTML, it doesn't read the syntax the same way. It's not going to work. You can see it's already changing colors and doing weird things we don't want it to do. JavaScript reads something called camel case way better. So what I'm going to do is say original button, but I want the two words to be attached to each other, no spaces, no dashes, and I want the B to be uppercase so it's easier for someone to read my code later on. So const original button equals, we're going to say document, and document is a keyword for the document object or the entire web page. The web page is the document, but inside the document we want to say dot get element by ID. So I'm going to call on an element using the getElementById method. This should be in camel case too. That is very important. It won't work if you don't use that. Get should be lowercase. Element by ID should be capitalized. And in parentheses and in quotations, I will say original button, which is the original ID for the original button. What that last part after the equal sign is doing is going into my web page, finding an element inside of the document with that specific ID. I'm going to do that again for the mystery button. I just copy pasted and make sure I change this to mystery. Did I spell mystery right? Yes, I think so. And I have those here. I'm just going to run my code so it saves what I did and I don't lose anything. And I'm going to check to see if anybody has any questions so far. Okay. How come many developers use ID instead of starting with class? Cool, that's an excellent question. So class is something that we did not talk about here. So if you're like, class, what is she talking about? Don't you worry, that's okay. Feel free to check out the web dev path so you can use these fancy words. But for those of you who do know what class is, there is class and ID. Those are different ways to select or specify different elements. Our class is good to be used on something generally or something that can or things that can be used over and over again. ID is better for very specific, unique elements. So I wanted to use ID on those two buttons because they are uniquely different. I want them to do two different functions. I want two different things to happen to them. So I used IDs because that's just the best practice. If you use class, then there's gonna be some funkier things going on in your JavaScript. It leaves room for funkier things to happen. So I would highly suggest that you use getElementById as well. Wow, thank you. Why does the second variable have the same name? It should not. It should not. That is, wow, you guys are awesome. You guys caught a mistake. Everybody makes them. So it should not say const original button, because if I call on that original button in camel case again, it's not going to work. It's going to be like, which one? I don't know. So get rid of original in that second variable and say mystery. Thank you so much for calling that out. Oh, people are getting fancy with border radius. I love this. I love this so much. So we should no longer have two original buttons. Your first one should be const original button equals document getElementById in parentheses in quotations original button. Your second one should say const mystery button equals document getElementById mystery button. Cool. And you guys are ready to get fancy. Gonna get fancy. So now we're going to have a random number function. Okay, so some of you guys might remember earlier someone brought up hexadecimals in the chat. There are many different ways to call on colors in CSS. We're going to play around with one of the ways to do that, and that is RGB parentheses. Inside of the parentheses, it would be a number. Okay, I should make this a comment because no, what I'm doing right now is not JavaScript syntax. So I'm going to make this a comment. Follow along with my comment. Actually, let me make this easier for you guys to understand. This is not JavaScript. All right, so there are inside of our CSS, we can have an RGB code for a color. That's red, green, blue. The first number that would go there would be a number for red. So if I want it to be full red, the furthest number I can use is 255. That's a whole nother conversation for another day. Feel free to look that up in your own time, but just know that 255 is the highest number I can use for RGB. If I want it to be full red, I use 255 on the first placement. That's for red. The second placement is for green. I could say, once again, 255. And if I want it to be full blue, I would say 255 for blue, the last placement. If I have all of them at 255, then I get the color white. If I have all of them at 0, I have the color black. Anything in between that is all the shades of the rainbow. So I'm going to stick with 255 for this code. Because well, I'll talk about that later with you guys, but I'm going to just put these number signs here as a placeholder for RGB. What I want to do with my JavaScript is create a variable that will hold the RGB code as a string. So I want to say const equals random color, and random color is going to hold a string, which would be like a word or a sentence, or it could be a number, but this is something for it to read, not for something for it to add up. So I want it inside of quotations, so it knows that it is a string. Inside of that string, I am going to say RGB, like we read earlier, and I'm going to have 2 parentheses, and this is a string. I'm going to delete this last part here because we don't need this anymore. I'm going to delete this. This is not JavaScript comment because this is now JavaScript and we need it. So I'm getting rid of that. I have this. I'm going to take 2 seconds to let everyone like breathe, catch up. Questions? Cool. Someone was asking about ID versus class. I explained that a little bit earlier. So feel free to like watch the re-recording of this if you have any questions or you want to hear something again. It will be published as soon as we're done. And we should be done soon, so let's get there. So now in line 8, after line 7, the comment in line 7, you should have line 8, const random color equals RGB parentheses as a string, which means inside of quotations. I use single. I could also use double. Whatever you want to use is fine. And I'm going to put another quotation in between that. So I want to have, I want to be able to fill the number placements inside of RGB. Things are going to get a little funky here. I'm going to say num, num, num. This is just going to be a fun way for me to stick in number values inside of this variable. Before each num, it should have plus, 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 and that will add things in. One moment. Sorry guys, give me 2 seconds. I'm realizing that this part's a little weird, so I want to just give you guys the finished version. And I am going to I want to give you guys the finished version, and then I'm going to explain it to you that way, because I think that that might be a little clearer for some people. The way I'm doing it right now might be a little funky. So how about we play around with this down there? So I'm going to get rid of this. Let's reset here because I'm realizing I'm getting kind of weird and funky. There should be nothing after line 7 anymore. Keep it blank. First thing we want to do is create a function. And this function is going to give us a random color. It's just going to produce a random RGB code like the one that we talked about earlier. It's going to produce it at random. It's going to randomly select the numbers we want to put in the red, green, and blue placements. That is what this function is going to do. I'm going to comment that just so you guys have that in the back of your head. So to start from scratch, to make this easier, let's just focus on our function. What our function wants to do is place number values inside of the parentheses. So we're going to create a function with the word function. We're going to say RGB parentheses as the function name. And I want to give it a parameter of num. That num parameter is going to represent the numbers. After I've said my function name, I'm going to do curly brackets, hit enter, and inside of there is going to be the code for the function. So for those of you who are following along, we are now jumping into this function, and I'm going to explain how the color is being created as we go. I think it'll be a little easier for you guys if you're following along and doing it with me. I'm a hands-on person myself. After that, inside of the function, I want to return, spell return right first of all, return the math object in JavaScript. So the math object, JavaScript already knows. I don't even have to explain to it. Math is all sorts of things about adding and numbers and doing fun things. I want to use the math to randomly select a number. So in order to do that, I need to give it a limit or floor. And inside of the floor parentheses, I want to say math.random. So I can randomly select something and have parentheses after that. And then I want to say asterisk num. And that is going to be any num that randomly comes from the math object. Now, like I was saying before, remember everything in RGB has to be under 255. So my num in this situation is going to have to be 255. But I don't need to explain that just yet to the JavaScript. The JavaScript just needs to have a function to work with. So now we have a function for randomly selecting a number. After that, I am going to create a color changing function. This function is actually going to change the color and change the RGB code itself. So in order to do that, I want to create a function again with the keyword function. And let's call it color change, just so we know what it does easily and anyone can read our code and pick up where we left off. And we'll have curly brackets, and those curly brackets are going to hold what the function is going to do. So we already have our random number function, and after this next we're going to create the color changing function. I'm going to check in on our questions. Do we have any great exercises to practice JavaScript? Yes, so many. Head over to Codecademy when we're done with this. I actually put the link in the description, so head to that link in the description after we're done with this and check out the web dev path, check out our catalog. We have all sorts of great JavaScript stuff. This is confusing for beginners. Okay, if this is a little confusing, I'm going to break down what we're doing one more time. So we started off with 2 buttons, calling them in the JavaScript. So JavaScript can give behaviors to those buttons. After that, we created a function. This function is here because we need to change the color. But in order to change the color, we need to play around with the RGB code or the color code. That color code requires numbers in it. So because this is a random color generator, we want to randomly select numbers to place inside of that RGB code. In this next function that we're about to create, we're going to create the function that actually changes the code, the color code. But we're going to need to call on that random color function inside of this function to change the numbers, to change the color, to change the buttons. I hope that is making sense. please let me know if that's making sense. And please, please, please post your questions if you have anything. Yeah. So after this, someone has a someone posted the let random color variable in there. We're not there just yet, but we're going to get there. So let's do this together. So next, with our color change function, inside of this, we want to call on that color code, RGB. As you guys can see at the very end of the JavaScript that I have here, I have a variable for this already set up for you guys, so you guys don't have to go through the craziness. So take that comment and put it inside of your function. And I don't want it to be a comment anymore, so I'm going to get rid of those 2 slashes before it. The first line inside of my function is a random color variable. That random color variable is holding our RGB code. Our RGB code is a string, and where the red number value would be, I have my random number function inside of it. RGB 255 is replacing the parameter as an argument. And so that red RGB function that I created earlier, the random number function, is going to be run for red and randomly give me a number that is less than 255 or equal to 255 at random. I have that again after a comma. I have that again for my green placement. It's going to randomly give me a number under or equal to 255. And then again for the blue. If it's running these functions each time for red, green, and blue, I'm randomly going to get a different color every single time. So I simply created a variable to call this. Random color will be used to call this in the function, so I don't have to keep repeating this code over and over again, because it was a lot. I think we can all agree on that one. So after that line, after that variable, I want to create a new line. And in that line, I want to apply what I just did to the buttons of themselves. So right now I have a way of creating a random color, but I haven't told my JavaScript which elements it's applying this to yet. So I want to create something called an event. An event is something that just takes place in the browser, whether you scroll or you click or you double tap or you right swipe, that is an event. I want to create an event with the keyword event and then have a period after it, because we're going to be clicking and scrolling to make fun things happen. After that, I'm going to say target, because I want to target something specifically. I want the event to take place on a specific target. And then after that, I want to say style, because I'm going to change the style. After that, I'm going to say background color. And I want that to be one word, camel case. It's very important that it is one word and that the C is uppercase. And then I'm going to set that equal to random color and then have a semicolon. So the event target, the target of the event will have its style changed, specifically its background color changed to random color. It's going to, and inside of random color, another function is taking place where random numbers are being given to create a random color. So now I have the functions I need to make this happen. But we need to do something so that this function, this color change function, takes place on the buttons. So I'm going to run this just so I don't lose any of the code I've done so far. And I'm going to check to see how people are doing. Yay. I misspelled background. Oh yeah, that was important. Sorry guys, let's get rid of that G that shouldn't be there. Thank you for helping me catch that bug. And thanks, I quit my job to become a web dev. That is amazing. Oh my God, that is amazing. Happy dance. It's amazing. You could also use string interpolation, but we're not going to get into that today. We're not getting into that today. That I want this to be something that anybody who's never seen JavaScript before can do. So for those of you who know this fancy stuff, and for those of you who want to know something with this fancier stuff, and for those of you who are like, I don't even know what's going on, but I'm following along anyway, that's okay. Head over to Codecademy and check out what we have there, because you can what I'm teaching you right now is a part of a much bigger lesson, which is a part of a bigger path that helps you to get to the point where you can be a web dev like some of these awesome people in this chat right now. Awesome. If you can't clearly see the code, I'm really sorry about that. The best thing that you can do is head to come back to this page when we're done with the live stream and check it out again. Hopefully you'll see it better there. And if you can at all, then click on the project link and look at the solution code and kind of follow along to what you're hearing me say. I think that would be really helpful for you to try this again and do it in a more clear way. I'm really sorry if you can't see this. Okay, so can we do a picture as a background? Yes, these are fun things that you can do. Head to the web dev path, guys. It's awesome. So I'm gonna wrap this up because we're almost done. You guys have done it. You guys have created HTML, CSS, JavaScript. You're about to make an interactive website. Like, you're walking away from this saying, I have made an interactive website before. Congratulations. Whether this was easy or hard for you, this is an accomplishment. Not everyone can say they've done that. So I want you to give yourself a pat on the back. I want you to breathe. I want you to drink some water. And let's keep going. We have 2 lines of code left. Or technically 3, because I like to space things out. So finally, what I'm going to do is call on original button, so that original button can have color change happen to it. So original button. And earlier I was talking about an event taking place, like double tapping, swiping, scrolling. I want to click on original button. So I'm going to say dot on click. When I click on original button, I want the color change function to take place. Cool. Let's run this. When I click on original color, a button, remember that's the one's called pick a color. When I click on original button, oh gosh, it should change. And we have a bug. When I was clicking on original button, I was expecting the color to change, but it did not. So there's an issue in our code. That might be, did I spell this right? Yes, I did. It matches this. Yes, it does. I called the element by the ID of original button. Let me make sure that the original button I wrote in JavaScript matches what I have in my HTML. Original button, yes, it does. So there might be an issue inside of my function. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. So let me check on this function. Inside of my random number function. Let me make this a little bit easier and less confusing for people too. Maybe I should change that name of the function to random number, which means I'm going to have to change it again here. Random number. This might help people follow along a little easier, especially if you're depending on sound to hear me right now. So I'm just changing that. You don't have to if you don't want to, but it's just gonna help make things make sense. Oh, someone knows what's up. So someone called this out, and this is so silly of me. Sometimes you have a bug, and at the end of the day, you realize you're just going with the flow of things, and you forgot to do something very simple. So I want everyone to go back to their HTML file right now. We made a mistake. So inside of our head tag, we have a link tag linking to our CSS. So HTML knows that the CSS applies to it. Awesome, right? But we never told the HTML to be connected. We never connected our HTML to the JavaScript. So our HTML is like, why are you clicking on me right now? I don't know what you're talking about. because we never said, hey, the JavaScript's going to tell you what to do when you get clicked on. So after our section, but before the end body tag, I am going to create something called a script tag. Inside of that script tag, I want to call on main.js so that it knows to go to main.js. So in order to do that, sorry, I'm like looking and talking to you guys at the same time. I need to say source equals main.js. And let's run that. So now our HTML and our JavaScript are connected. And did I do something wrong here? I think I did, because it doesn't like that. Did I use the script tag correctly? Let's see. So I have my main.js. I did connect it to the main.js, which is good. But maybe if I run it again? Interesting. So our JavaScript is now connected to our HTML. Make sure you follow that that step. It should be the third from the bottom inside of the body tag, one of the last elements. We should have a script, source equals main.js, and then an end script tag. Now I want to go back to my JavaScript because I'm still not getting what I want. So let me make sure that I'm not spelling anything wrong. Let me make sure that everything's where it needs to be. What's going on? Oh my God, yes, no matter how. The other day I spent like 15 minutes trying to figure something out only to realize there was no period somewhere. So little mistakes happen all the time. There's no issue with that. Someone's saying that it seems like the original button, there's something wrong with original button. So HTML tag is original button. Let's see. The HTML tag has the ID of original button. Cool. And in JavaScript, we have the original button also. So that should be good. I think you're not using the color function. Color change. We do have color change here. Color change is here. What else are we thinking? You can always link more than one JavaScript file if you ever have one. You just add multiple script tags. Well, I have to, in order to get the console to pop up on here, I'd have to do all sorts of crazy backend stuff. So we can't really make that happen. And another person is mentioning 255. For RGB, it's a really funky thing, but 255 is the highest number RGB will go up to. So that's why we're using it. Let's see. It seems like you guys have some really great stuff. True, yeah. Okay, true. Okay, so we're ready for that. We're ready for that. So I can also open the console here. So I just hit Command Option J on my on a MacBook Pro. For those of you who don't know how to do that, you can also right-click on your browser and go to Inspect to inspect an element and pull up. I want to pull up Console. So if you're seeing this, that means you're in Elements. Go over to Console to see what I'm seeing. And people want to look through the console to see what's wrong. We're really getting kind of crazy. And I love it. I love it. Someone is getting an error inside of that console, cannot read property type target of undefined. So it seems like the issue is, I'm going to close this console. It seems like the issue is that it's not understanding what the event target is. I think that what I should do is, let's change this. I think I need to change my color change function, in order to make this work. So it doesn't understand that there's an event. It's not understanding the event target, that is. And in order to fix that, I want it to take a parameter of event. Let's give it that parameter so that it knows that there's an event being run through this function. So I pretty much just put the word event inside of the parentheses following color change. And let me run this. And let's see. It's still not taking that. It's not taking my event object. So yes, Tego mentioned, I might be pronouncing your name wrong, I'm sorry, shouldn't color change receive an argument. So I did put that, that event in here, but I don't have an argument here. So let's give it an event argument. Let's run that. Still doesn't seem to like this. Interesting. Someone mentioned add event listener. There's ways to do that without adding an event listener. We shouldn't have to do that to make this work. Let's see. I will, for those who are asking questions about Math Floor, I'll get to that after we figure out what's going on here. Is line 19 in the HTML correct? Let's see. Script. I believe so. Did I do something wrong? Is someone seeing something wrong? What did I do? Sorry. As I'm looking through screens. Let's see. It should be fine. That is correct. So we have the script tag at the bottom in line 15. That should be there. You should have that. Let's see. We have all caps over here, or just put defer in the script. I want to stick to the most simple way to do this. You have original button on click. Someone's mentioning. Is the event supposed to be in the brackets? That is, yes, it is, as an argument and a parameter. I did that on purpose, but if you try it out without it and see if that works for you and let us know. It is best practice to have, I am being lazy, it is best practice to have those semicolons afterwards, but that's not going to affect whether it's working or not. But that is best practice and you should be doing that. So if you don't have semicolons after your lines inside of your JavaScript functions, you probably should put them there. And yes, so we could do it this way. So let's try this, because Mustafa made a good point of document get element by ID, and we could use that instead as the parameter. Use that instead and change the parameter. Let's try this because I believe that this could work. So we're going to get rid of event target and replace it with get element by ID, and I'm just going to put this here. But the issue here is, how is it going to know what the ID is? So I'm not so sure if that's going to be a solution to my problem. So let me go back to my event target.
You need to not call the function, but just pass the function.
Okay, so in this last line, we have an in-house suggestion. That last function, you were saying that I should...
Yeah, if you delete the parentheses.
Delete the parentheses. So my colleague, Alex, who is helping us out today, he said that he thinks we should get rid of these parentheses at the end of color change because that might be throwing this off. Let's try it. And it's working. And Alex just saved the day. So I'm going to go over what just happened so you guys understand why this just worked. So really what the very simple issue was, in that last line before I had these parentheses here, And that parentheses meant that it was expecting something to be passed through it or an argument. But there is no argument that needs to happen here because I took care of what needs to happen inside of the function already with my event and my event target. So I want to get rid of those two parentheses in that last line. Those should not be there. Inside of the function, I have an event happening already, and that event has been defined as onClick. And original button onClick equals a color change. So every time I click on original button, I will have a color change. So I'm going to go through this from top to bottom. I have my original button being called from the HTML. I have my mystery button being called from the HTML. I have a function that is coming up with random numbers. And then I have a function called color change that is changing the color. Inside of that function, inside of the color changing function, I am assigning random numbers for a red, green, and blue value. And then I decide that when an event takes place on my target, the style will change. Specifically, the background style will be changed to the random color value that is produced. And then after that, on the very last line, I am assigning that function to original button when onClick takes place, when a click takes place on that original button. And then when I go to my HTML after I run, when I go to my browser, and I click on that button, the color changes. Cool? How are we doing? And one thing I want to mention is people in the chat are like giving amazing suggestions on many different ways to do this. That is the fun thing about programming. There are so many different ways to do like one thing. There are ways to optimize your code so your code doesn't have to be super long, or ways to make something happen a few different ways. So some of the suggestions that you guys gave, I will definitely work, but it would require a little bit of knowledge that not everyone has, and I want to make sure everyone can access this. So we're going with some of the more simpler ways to make this happen. For those of you who are like, this didn't feel simple, don't worry, that is fine, because that's what practice is for. Even myself, I'm still making mistakes. So it's perfectly fine if at some point you felt lost, or if you're currently lost. Just feel free to ask questions. It seems like you guys are helping each other out, which is so great for me to watch. I love this. And you can also watch this again, practice this at home, join the web dev path, and you will get way more information than you're getting right now. You can't build a tower in 1 hour. So join in on the path. Someone asked some questions about some people asked some questions about the random color, the math floor and math random and what's going on there. So what I want you guys to realize is JavaScript already knows what math is. Math is an object that JavaScript already understands. I added a method called floor to math. That method is saying what the limit is. What's the floor of this? And that's kind of weird because whether the limit is the where it's too much or too little it's just the word that we use for the limit, floor. Inside of that, I have math.random, and that is another method on the math object, and that is randomly producing numbers from like the math object. So I'm randomly getting numbers from math. Math holds numbers, math holds different math operations like adding and subtracting, all sorts of fun things. And then after that, I am saying for anything in num. Num is just a random variable that I have there because I just want to call it num. You could call it anything, really. It could be dogs, cats, anything. But I just called it num so we have a better understanding of what it is. And whatever goes in that num value is what will be the floor and what we will randomly select from. So that is why you find num inside of the function, but also in the parameter. And when I come down to my color change function, I have random number with an argument of 255. 255 is now replacing num in the random number function. And 255 is now my limit, and it's what I'm randomly selecting numbers from. So anything between 0 and 255. Some people ask why 255. That is a more complicated thing, but that is because RGB, the color code, sitting inside of this variable. RGB color codes only take numbers 0 to 255. Why that is a conversation for another day, but feel free to check that out on your own time. Or there's plenty of articles and informationals out there on the web about color codes and why they are the way they are. But I used the number 255 because for the RGB color code, 255 is the highest number. So what's happening in this color change function is every time it is called, it's randomly producing numbers and putting them inside of the RGB code for red, green, and blue. And I'm calling it random color, so I don't have to keep repeating this long string over and over again. And once again, in that last line of the function, I'm saying when an event takes place on the target, change the background color to a random color. And that is what's happening to my original button onClick. So we are almost done. One more line of code to do. We are going to say change the mystery button. So mystery button. And this time, instead of clicking on it, I want to be able to scroll on that button in order to make it change, so it mysteriously randomly gives me something instead of me being able to control it. So I'm going to use an event called wheel. On wheel equals color change, semicolon, and then I'm going to run this. So when I click on the original button, I can change the color. Oh, this is a cute green. We have red, we have another blue, another green. I can randomly change the color by clicking. But if I just scroll, I am mysteriously randomly getting a color now with the on wheel event. The color is changing. And I actually think that these two colors look excellent next to each other. So how are you guys feeling? How are we doing? I feel like I'm seeing so much happening in the chat, but it's hard to pay attention. Yes, so we just did this for the second button. So follow along with this code, and you have now programmed your second button to work. Oh, in order to see the random colors being picked, I would go into, so if we go back to that console that we pulled up before, this is how some of the other people in the chat were able to see different errors and things like that. When you right click on your page and go to inspect, some of you guys might see inspect element, you can pull up the console inside of that the element inspect. This makes you seem so fancy too. Like, pull this out at work and people are gonna be like, oh my God, they know everything. You can go into the console and you can run these functions. If you run the function for, if you run these functions inside of console log, you can see the different colors being chosen, or the different color codes being chosen, different random numbers being chosen every time you click or wheel through a button. So if you go in there and like copy paste your JavaScript over in there, you can play around with the console and see like the background JavaScript working. Different browsers have different ways of doing this. So on Chrome, Safari, Firefox, for the most part, you should be able to inspect the element. If you're using one of those not as popular browsers, you might have to do something different to find it, but almost everyone can. If you don't know how to, Google it, you'll find it. So someone wants to run through one more time. No problem at all, because we did a lot. I'm going to run through this one more time. Let's start from the beginning. We created the HTML. that was simple enough. We created the structure, which is the elements, like the pictures and the text and the buttons that we're seeing. After we did that, we created some CSS to make beautiful colors and give things size and create space. And then we went into JavaScript, which is always a little funkier, but once you start like feeling more comfortable with JavaScript, you can do anything, like legit anything with it. It's crazy. We went in, and the thing that we wanted to do was give the buttons the ability to change color when an event takes place on them. An event being something like a click or a scroll. We called on the buttons inside of the JavaScript. One is called original button and mystery button. The way we were able to do this is by having a variable and setting it equal to the document, getting an element inside of the document. So we call the document, we get the element by ID, and we use original button for original button. The ID is inside of the HTML. So button ID equals original button, button ID equals mystery button. We were able to call them inside of the JavaScript in the beginning. After that, we got funky, and we needed random numbers for a color code. The color code reads numbers and converts those numbers into colors, with red, the different values of red, green, and blue. But in order to do that, we had to find a way to randomly create numbers so that we don't have to code that ourselves every single time. So we created this using the math object. The math object is already understood, but JavaScript already understands math. So the math object, so by calling the floor method of math and calling the random method of math, JavaScript already knew what that meant to, and how to do that. So we said, we want the math floor, we want math random, and we want you to use this num value that we're a placeholder pretty much that we have here. After that, we changed the color. We changed that color by giving color the parameter of event. That's important. I will explain as I go. So once we have our random color decided, we have an event. Event is a keyword already understood by JavaScript. An event just means something is happening to the web page. So an event can be a click, a scroll, it could be anything. And we want to use a target for that event. So if I click on the rainbow, or if I click on the title, nothing happens. It might highlight something, but nothing is happening to the behavior of the website. But if I have a specific target, like my buttons, something is going to happen to them. So when an event takes place on the target that I specify, the background color is going to become random color. So it was time for me to determine what those targets were. So I left that function, the function was done, and I said original button, on click, color change. My original button is the target, on click is the event, and color change is my function that I just made. So when I click on original button, the color changes. When I wheel or scroll through mystery button, the color changes. Now, if you guys still want to know more about events, this is just one exercise, and it's one of the later exercises inside of a much larger lesson about events, understanding what they are and how they work and how can I use them now that I understand a little bit more about websites. You can find information on that inside of the web dev path and enroll in that class. And by the end of that class, something as simple as this will be a piece of cake for you. You will start off though through the path learning HTML and CSS if you don't already know that. Or if you know those things already, you can skip up to the point that you want to be at, like JavaScript. Those things, all links to those are all in the project description. And you can look through, if you look on the side here, you can also learn a little bit more about events. Inside of this MDM reference link that we have here, it just explains all the different types of events there are. So if you don't want to do click, you could do something different, like I don't even know, like double tap or anything, Zoom. You can create those, use those events. It will explain how to make those events happen inside of that reference page that I've linked. So feel free to check that out on your own time if you ever want to. And yeah. If OnWheel is not working for you, it could be a browser issue too, because if your browser is a little older, it may not understand what OnWheel is. So if that is an issue for you too, check out that MDM reference page, the link inside of the narrative, and that will explain different ways to do it. This code is available. If you are joining in a little later, I mentioned before in the in the video description, there's a link to this project that I'm doing right now. There's also going to be a recorded version of what we did here today for you to rewatch whenever you want, share with your friends, and also the solution code should be there. So some people's buttons are not working for them and things like that. Feel free to rewatch this and work through it again. Feel free to grapple around with this content until you feel comfortable with it, and that's fine. If you got to the end of this and something isn't working, that is completely okay. Watch this again. Check out the solution code. Yeah. And also check out some of the cool things that these other learners have said in here, because some people mentioned some things that are that provide other ways to do this. So I am going to head out now and go back to writing courses and doing things like that. And I really hope you guys enjoyed this. We will be having other live sessions too. There is one next week coming up. Pay attention on Twitter, pay attention on YouTube, subscribe, like this, comment on this, and stay connected with us so you guys know about the other ones dropping. We have things from data science to computer science to web dev and funky things in between. So just stay connected with us. Check out all of our paths, especially the web dev path if this spoke to you. And follow us on Twitter. The link is in the project description. Thank you so much for joining in today. And I am signing out. Goodbye.